After seeing those Assassin's Creed Shadows trailers showing off gameplay of Yasuke, it got me excited to finally get to play as my boy for the very first time in a video game. But of course, the internet reminded me that Yasuke was actually a playable character in one of the Samurai Warriors games. And luckily around the same time, Koei Tecmo was like, hey, we just released Samurai Warriors 4 DX on Steam, so come on and try it out. So immediately I thought to myself, oh shit, they're about to hook me up with that Yasuke gameplay early. That is until I started up the game and realized that he was only added in Samurai Warriors 5 and not 4DX. Aw, dang it. So today, instead of us talking about the game with Yasuke, let's get into Samurai Warriors 4DX and see if this port of the PS4 version holds up. The original game was released in 2014 with even more spin-offs and expansions dropping years later. Actually, the deluxe version we're looking at today was a Japanese exclusive for a whole 5 years before they ported the PC version of it worldwide earlier this year. It has all the same gameplay and modes from the original game packed in with 150 of the DLC they added since it was released. So after 10 years from the original game and 5 years to get it localized, this has to be the utmost definitive Warriors experience, am I right? Well, kinda, but it does still show its age a bit. So first off, I have to admit that this is one of my first actual Warriors games that isn't a total spin-off. I played a couple of the games here and there and dabbled in it, but I never really got to finish anything or got very far with them. So as much as I can say that I love these games developed by Omega Force, I only first got started playing the One Piece and Zelda spin-offs. Because as far as the games with real-life historical figures in it, I wasn't really feeling the vibe of those plots and characters. But from what I'm seeing here, the characters are all highly exaggerated versions of their real selves. And that's a great thing because I don't think I'd care half as much if these dudes were super realistic. They have the flashy outfits, the colorful hair, the ridiculous weapons, and the dialogue between them is over the top too. I'm not much of a history buff, but I feel like every other video I do has characters in it that draw connections to real life, especially when it comes to everything around the Warring States period. So seeing some of the people here that I've also seen in other games gives me appreciation for the unique designs. And when I eventually play the 5th game, I'm sure I'll enjoy Yasuke's design too, but that's besides the point. The story mode is split up into 12 different sagas that focus on different clans and their position in the Warring States period. Each story has different characters to choose from, so you can mix and match whoever you want to bring into fights. It doesn't change anything about the story based on who you choose, but some levels will limit what characters you can play as. All the scenarios are fully animated, so for anyone who wants to get invested in this retelling of history, there's something to look forward to. Again, I'm not the biggest history nerd, but I couldn't help but love the way this story was laid out. With over 50 characters to play as, making this whole thing fit into one storyline would have confused the hell out of me. But separating each story into its own version that focuses on a single faction made things easier to follow along. And you'll still need to play through quite a bit of the stories to unlock everything, but the way those stories flow into each other feels pretty satisfying. But of course, this game has more than just the regular story mode, so there's even more to do. And the Chronicle mode by itself may just be the biggest highlight here for the amount of replay value. First, you gotta start off making your very own custom character. You can make up to 20 different characters too, in case you want to start different files and customize a full roster of fighters. But I saw this one hairstyle and immediately knew that I had to make Cloud Strife as my first character. You know, just with a little more melanin sprinkled in. And this will still be the closest thing I can get to Yasuke in this game, but anyway. There's so much more depth in this mode since you're not just playing through stories that focus on one faction at a time. And it's not trying to tie itself down to history, so things can be a little more loosey-goosey. Here you can build friendship levels with characters, set your own life goals, and play through this original story the way that you want to. You start by choosing a region, and I went with Kinky because it just sounded like it was gonna be a fun time. The main objective is to journey across the land while meeting every single character that's on your path. If you're someone who loves seeing the interactions, you'll get a kick out of building bonds with all the characters and seeing how your connections grow over time. And after you do build those bonds, you can even unlock their moveset for your own created characters. I just love the extra amount of freedom you have here to mess around and fight with no end in sight. Plus the added content and mini games here made it something that I wouldn't mind coming back to just for the hell of it. And if you wanted a more personal connection with these characters, there's a ton you can look forward to doing. But compared to most of the other Warriors games I've played, this one has some mechanics that stood out to me. Normally you have the light attacks and heavy attacks, with the heavy being how you end off a lot of your combos. But I was surprised to see that there were even more combos you could do just by using your heavy attacks first. Well, here they're called hyper attacks, and they're the best way to wipe out hordes of enemies that get in your way. Not only do they help clear out those enemies, but it's really useful if you want a faster way to get around the map. The only catch is that hyper attacks don't work against named enemies and bosses. That is, unless you're in your rage mode where all your attacks are stronger for a short amount of time. And for me, going through levels using my hyper attacks, my regular attacks, my special attacks, and my rage mode just ended up being a really cool combo flow. Mix that in with all the items you can unlock and equip to your characters, and you can make a really awesome build. You can equip items that do things like increase your attack, your defense, your speed, or do things like heal you when you're in a pinch. So because you can't level your characters up outside of battle, the thing I had equipped the most was this thing that gives you extra EXP. So every time I started a new saga with characters on level 1, I would just grind through that first level with them and try to get them to at least level 6. And as you do level up those characters, you can add more strings to your combos, get a bigger health bar, or a bigger special bar. And all of that is before even talking about the different weapons you can unlock for each character with increased stats, or the fact that you can upgrade your weapons and equip gems to them for even bigger buffs. So things might start off slow as you start to get your levels up for each character, but after a while it becomes a really fun time. But regardless of those fun mechanics, you can still see one of the places where this 10-year-old game has not aged for the best. And I might be alone on this one, but for me it was the lack of a lock-on system. So apparently the mainline Warrior series hasn't had a lock-on for a majority of its games. It's something that I got really used to after playing so many of these other spin-offs. But in the year 2024, I think that it's a crime for many action games to be missing a lock-on feature. Because many of these battles are fighting against hordes of enemies on top of fighting the camera to do what I needed to do. And yeah, you can always readjust the camera to stay behind your character, but those moments where I had to fight very specific bosses weren't nearly as fun as I wanted them to be. And hey, maybe it's a bit much asking for a simple port to add in a totally new gameplay function, but I would have had a much easier time if they did. At its core, Samurai Warriors 4 DX is a PC port of a classic game from the series. It brings back everything you loved before and puts it in front of a potential new audience. Now, it would have been cool if this was also ported over to Xbox and PS5, but maybe we'll see that sometime soon. Because hey, if Japan could get this 5 years ago on the Switch, then come on, what are y'all doing? But if you played Samurai Warriors 4 or the deluxe version, let me know what you think about it in the comments. But as my first legit Samurai Warriors game, I had a great time. It's cool to see just how different these games can be, and especially how much this series has evolved after all these years. And thank you again to Koei Tecmo for letting me try this one out. Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.